Hello good people, today we're taking a look at the best gaming DAC amps that I've collected over time. Now these external sound cards give you the convenience of physical volume control, interesting audio features, and the microphone input for comms. I have always said that gaming and audio is just as important as having proper aim, so if you're looking for an external DAC amp solution, you my friend have come to the right place. We have a wide range of products that vary in complexity, price, and size. I've even gone ahead and played the games only with the best audio in my entire library, and use both a generic gaming headset like the BlackShark V2X from Razer and my favorite headphone, the HD5X from Drop, just to see how each amp keeps up with each headphone. I will keep things simple since I don't understand half the specs anyway, but I will keep this analysis subjective based on these different sized ears, okay? So don't judge. So the contestants will include the funny named Schiit FULLA 3 and the Schiit HEL, the Mayflower ARC MK2, the Sound Blaster X3, both GSX units from EPOS the 300 and the 1000, and of course some best-selling Amazon items like the SYBA Sonic Gaming Amplifier, plus this really interesting Fosi Q4 DAC. I've covered some of these in detail, so links below to those videos, plus everything you see in this video can also be picked up, so explore those affiliate links. Thank you very much. Let's begin right after this. Say hello to proper airflow with Be Quiet Pure Bass 500 DX, a compact mid-tower with a mesh front panel and three 140mm Pure Wings 2 fans that are silent and capable. Enjoy tasteful ARGB illumination, a Type-C port, and an easy case to work in. Check it out below. Alright, so first of all, let's begin with the most basic unit here, the Schiit FULLA 3. It's a driverless, plug-and-play compact solution with that really cool industrial frame, no gaming bling whatsoever, large volume wheel that's been blacked out so you can actually see the volume level tick mark, that's appreciated, but it's a bit scratchy during rotation, and that's the only con of the build. You hear that? It's powered with a micro USB at the back, so it's perfect for notebook setups as it doesn't need additional power. There's an analog input at the back if you want to use this as an amplifier, plus a second micro USB port for power with like a battery bank if you want to use this while on the go with mobile. The headphone and mic inputs are at the front, almost discreetly labeled, and for both my headphone choices, it has plenty of power to drive either beyond volumes I'm comfortable with. Overall, the sound signature is leaning towards that neutral and flat response. The bass is well controlled, nice smooth high end as well, so no harsh treble even with loud volumes. This is an easy recommendation for me if you're looking for like the really simple almost pulled the Linus. If you're looking for a simple Schiit FULLA 3, this thing should satisfy with any gaming headset. Also, my two warnings here include the scratchy volume wheel, which was not present on my previous copy, which had a defective microphone input that died after several days of use, so just keep that in mind. And I will be performing the mic test in the end so you can hear how they sound versus each other. Moving on to this next interesting device, we have the Fosi DAC Q4. The only reason it's in this roundup is because of the two additional knobs at the front that add or remove bass and treble. I normally never play around with EQ because I prefer my headphones to give me the desired sound signature, but having these knobs actually benefited with the BlackShark V2 headset because I lowered the bass and increased the treble for a slightly sharper, more brighter sound from the headset without having to worry about downloading any of the drivers or doing anything in-game. The knobs have tactile steps while the main volume wheel is really nice and smooth. The headphone jack is at the front with three input selections as we have USB, optical, and RCA inputs, which is quite nice at this price point. There's a 5V DC input that is required for operation even when you have the PC USB plugged in. But from an audio perspective, this thing is impressive. It has a lot of power to drive my HD5X and beyond headphones with slightly lower sensitivity and high impedance, and being able to like control the treble and bass is actually quite intuitive. Like, sure, you can add the bass and destroy the entire lower end, but because we have that fine adjustment, you can just add a little bit or remove a little bit in either high end or the low end scenarios, and that basically gives you a really cool way to personalize your open headphones to sound a bit more bassy and slightly sharper, or remove some of that bass and treble from your closed headphones depending on what type of sound signature you prefer. Overall, for the price point, the sound is absolutely impressive. The only downside, and I'm putting that in quotations for a gaming Roundup is that it's quite forward, so you don't get that massive soundstage expansion like you do with other amplifiers that deliver that by default. But for competitive gaming, even with an open style headset, it is absolutely not an issue for me personally. And to be honest, the character refinement based on the headphones is a bit more important to me than the really open soundstage. My two warning points for this unit is that the front I/O is a bit crowded, and also there's that tactile power on switch. So if you go just below the tactile switch when the thing is powered on, it will lower the volume. And then if you were to crank that back up, it will take a moment to catch up to that desired volume again. So careful not to blow your eardrums when you lower the volume and when you crank it back up. Also, this is the only unit that does not have a mic input from this Roundup. Otherwise, it would make it a fantastic killer combo for gaming. But if you're looking just for audio, this is an easy recommendation. Next up is the small plastic unit, the GSX 300 from EPOS. It's powered with micro USB at the back with separate audio jacks here as well. It's the only device with an angled body, so the volume wheel is easy to handle. Blue illumination indicates stereo mode, while red means surround. And you activate it with a button at the front that does a really good job with audio expansion with not totally destructive properties. For games where a larger soundstage is beneficial to the environment, like in Little Nightmares 2, it really helps to bring an extra level of like satisfaction from the game, since it helps to simulate this larger speaker setup instead of headphones. So you get really big sound while wearing headphones, and that's a really cool feeling, especially when it comes to open style headphones. I would categorize this to sound a bit more full, especially on the low end compared to the two sound cards we just talked about, but the only thing it lacks is power. So with HD5 100% volume for me to be comfortable and like even want more. When it comes to gaming headsets, the BlackShark V2X also has to be almost running at 100% to give me the desired volume. So this isn't for your enthusiast level audiophile grade headphones, but for gaming headsets, it should satisfy. Also, because the unit is super light, pressing the front button requires you to actually hold it, because otherwise it just slides around. And my only warning here is about the software, because I've experienced plenty of bugs without it recognizing my surround sound, and plenty of the other sliders not working. Moving on to the next sound card that really surprised me from a performance and feature standpoint, here we have the SYBA Sonic Gaming Amplifier at around $40. It is driverless, powered with mini USB, has both digital and RCA out at the back, while at the front we have a line in, mic in, headphone out, and even a full-size 6.3mm headphone out as well. The toggle on the left changes between the three hardware EQ modes with bass boost, default or direct, and treble boost. I would normally advise against it, but I'm sure many gamers would appreciate this feature, adding more bass or adding treble for a slightly brighter sound extension. On the BlackShark V2, in my experience, adding the bass was a bit too much. It made everything too muddy on the low end, while adding the treble just became too harsh. So I appreciate the finer adjustment on the Q4 DAC, but in the direct line, it was perfectly fine. Now the volume wheel on my unit was kind of all over the place. For the first 50%, it has this weird resistance, then it gets smooth to about 80%, and then again, it gets scratchy. And this is kind of a perfect example where features outweigh the build quality and the sound quality, because out of this entire Roundup, I prefer the sound quality of this thing the least. Yeah, that's right. On a positive note, it has plenty of power to drive my HD5 and beyond, so that's good, but it just kind of has no life to it in terms of audio. So you might want to add treble or bass to your headset to give this thing a bit more character. So it sounds kind of boring in an almost non-layered audio representation, but kind of ideal for competitive stuff where you just need to hear audio cues, and running my V2X and Tarkov gave me wonderful hearing senses to know from which direction they're gonna eat my bullets. Honestly, for a gaming sound card around $40, it is excellent value, just don't expect perfection. Now let's move on to the more high-end sound cards, starting with the Sound Blaster X3. This is the most feature-rich, gaming-focused unit, and the one that I've used the longest, as you can see by all the dust on the top and around the glossy parts of the volume wheel. For under $150, this is an easy recommendation, almost like an instant recommendation, because the amplifier is beautiful with lots of warmth behind it and also a lot of power too. It's the only sound card with a Type-C connection. We have all the line out ports, a line in and optical, the headphone and mic jacks at the front are kind of weirdly separated, but the volume wheel has tactile rotation steps and is also a button for mute, while the 3 buttons at the front control your mic volume, mode for direct audio, plus this SXFI button for surround sound. The X3 has an entire gaming software suite with EQ profiles, custom surround modes based on pictures of your ear and face, lots of microphone options in here as well, but it's honestly a little bit overwhelming when it comes to software, so I removed it and I just run the X3 in its default configuration because the stereo imaging is fantastic with beautiful layering and really nice natural soundstage that doesn't go beyond what I'm comfortable with in terms of gaming, movies, and I also edit with this sound card for all these videos. When it comes to surround sound, I honestly cannot tell the difference between the surround modes on the X3 versus like the GSX 300 because of all the added reverb to grow your environment. I would recommend you try it if you have the X3 because for games that don't require really precise audio, it's a nice fun factor when it comes to like expanding your audio environment with surround that doesn't sound super natural, but it does expand your environment and makes things more distant. Doesn't feel like you're wearing headphones, but feels like you're listening to massive speakers beside you. Probably the only con with the X3 would be the USB issues I'm experiencing on my AMD systems, where the sound control panel would just crash and would require me to unplug the sound card from the computer for it to work again. And this is something I've experienced from one AMD machine to the other. And then we have the legendary GSX 1000. It's a very cool driverless unit with a touchscreen, and this is still the only device I would recommend for surround sound. The binaural expansion and the engine that's built in just sounds absolutely fantastic to expand your environment without totally destructing it. That's not a word, without totally destroying it. It has a really interesting and unique way of removing headphones from your head, where it sounds like you're listening to the room and not to the headphones, and that's a fantastic feeling for open world games or where you just want to feel like in this massive audio space instead of audio coming right from here. You have multiple settings for reverb and you can even save profiles on each corner. It has similar warm tones as the GSX 300, but with slightly wider soundstage, and it's also a bit more powerful in terms of the amplifier. Really the only downside of like the GSX 300 and the GSX 1000 is power output, especially compared to like basically all the sound cards in this roundup. They don't have enough power to drive anything beyond a standard gaming headset. As soon as you introduce like slightly more sensitive headphone, I always want more volume. And so this is where we get units like the Schiit HEL. This is a legit powerhouse of an amplifier targeted towards gamers with good taste in headphones. And this one requires wall power, such that it's still using a micro USB, but is absolutely gorgeous with that metal casing and red accents both on the sides and the power LED. It's also 4 times the power of the FULLA 3 with smoother volume wheel, a gain switch beside the full 6.3mm headphone jack, a stereo mic input with a gain knob to control your level. So this is one of those devices you get if you want performance, no bling, no BS whatsoever. I mean, it's also driverless, so that's awesome. So incredible layering, fantastic bass, although I prefer the slightly warmer representation of what Sennheiser offers, but this is what you get if you want to go beyond the traditional gaming headset and want to plug in more premium headphones into this later on. And finally, we have the fanciest one on hand, the Mayflower ARC MK2. I've used the previous one for years before switching to something else to try out different features, especially for surround sound, but the Mark II is like on a whole different level. So first, it's the only unit in my collection that has a 4-pole headset jack, aside from that mic input, meaning you don't need separate headphone and mic cables, and this is a huge thing for a gaming product, since most gaming headsets today have the 4-pole connection and you are given a splitter cable, but here you just plug in the 4-pole into the headset jack without needing to use the splitter cable. The volume wheel is beautifully smooth with rubber rings for better finger control. At the back we have RCA jacks with a switch at the front, auxiliary in and mic out, and optical in. For most setups you don't need a power supply, so just connect with the USB, but the power supply you can get as an optional accessory. To my ears this sounds more pleasant and more defined versus the Schiit HEL. Vocals in particular sound more forward and slightly closer with much better layering, which is impressive because the soundstage, while it is slightly more closed off versus the Schiit HEL, I prefer that really beautiful, absolutely detailed environment that you get submerged in with the Mark II ARC versus something like the Schiit HEL, which is still sounds fantastic, but with slightly wider representation, so you don't get that, you don't hear everything like right in front of you. Everything is slightly more pushed back, but you don't really realize it until you hear something like the ARC Mark II. It's weird. Overall, this is a very impressive amplifier and almost like a league of its own at how beautiful everything in-game sounds. We also have a bass boost DPS switch at the front, illuminated in blue when active, that would turn any open style headphone into bass heaven, with lots of warmth introduced into the bass that bleeds into the mid-range. So it's not something that I prefer, especially with the BlackShark V2X nor the HT5 but I'm sure some people would appreciate that if you're on a really bright headphone or a headset that's like really sharp. Boom, DPS, introduce a lot of warmth onto the lower range, but for me, this is something I would keep off. The only time I found DSP switch to benefit my listening style is if I'm listening at lower volumes. That way everything sounds a bit warm and more full body, but if I'm playing a game or listening to something quite loud, I prefer it off. All right, so now that's out of the way, let's talk microphone quality.
All right, so let's start with the Schiit FULLA 3. This one is incredibly sensitive, so be careful not to blow your teammates' eardrums when speaking into the microphone. It has some noise cancellation properties applied and some compression too, so yeah. Moving on to the GSX 300, this one sounds slightly better than the FULLA 3. It's not as sensitive, and the tones are a bit more natural without too much compression. Moving on to the SYBA Sonic Gaming DAC, this one's impressive because it's much cheaper than the GSX 300, but in terms of microphone quality, they sound almost identical. Like, to my ears, listening back to them, I couldn't tell a difference. So yeah, it's a very impressive mic pickup on this SYBA Sonic around the $40 mark. Next up is the Sound Blaster X3. This is my favorite out of the bunch. I would say it's like one of the best on the market right now, with beautiful tones, the natural sounding, just the right amount of compression, so you don't like hear everything, all the echo in this environment, but it compresses that sort of almost like a condenser microphone capsule, but it's coming from a $59 headset, so really like how this sounds. Moving on to the Sennheiser GSX 1000, this one is just as sensitive as the FULLA 3, but with more aggressive noise cancellation and like compression. I don't particularly like how this sounds. All right, so this is the Schiit HEL, the only sound card that allows you to actually control the level of the microphone, which is great, but you have to know what level you're in, and there's no pass-through into the headphones, so if you have any sort of audio recording program, that way you can see the level and adjust the level accordingly. I also will say it is an upgrade over the FULLA 3 because this is a stereo mic recording instead of mono on the FULLA 3. And finally, we have the Mayflower ARC MK2. It has upgraded preamps for the microphone versus the previous generation, which is great. And the reason why I'm using the BlackShark V2X headset is because at $59, you can hear how fantastic the microphone sounds across this range of sound cards. I'm actually quite surprised at how low the level is for the Mark II, given it's the most expensive sound card in this roundup. But in terms of the vocal character, it's fantastic. I think it's right up there along the Sound Blaster X3, but still I would choose the Sound Blaster X3 because it has just better volume across the range, and I wouldn't have to boost this in the software.
All right, so based on everything you heard, which one sounded best to your ears? Now I want to conclude with a few surprises along the way. The best sounding DAC amp / external gaming sound card is the Fosi Audio Q4 DAC, which has a lot of power and beautiful front-forward character, very similar to what the ARC Mark II does, but without that smooth highlight control. Here, the controls on the treble is a bit harsh, but that's why we have the little dial, so I can reduce it, and I'm not blasting the music anyway, so I'm like, if this had a mic input, this would be a fantastic combo for around $50. The Mayflower ARC Mark II is easily my second best choice in terms of audio quality, which is the best in this roundup. Is just a little bit on the expensive side. The bass boost for me is a bit too much, but I would say it would complement many V-shaped lovers. So, you know, it's there. I still love my Sound Blaster X3 for comms because to my ears it has the best, most natural and really neutral noise cancelling microphone input without needing to enable any additional noise cancellation. While the Schiit offerings are pretty unique because of their simplicity and neutral sound. If you want surround sound for gaming, the GSX 1000 will not disappoint, while the little brother, it's okay in terms of surround sound, but just keep in mind that it's not very powerful. So for gaming headsets, it'll be fine, but for anything beyond, Nope. While the SYBA Sonic Gaming DAC is feature-packed, but at $40, it sounds like it too. I'll leave links below for you to explore if you're in the market for a new external sound card. Also, we've done plenty of other videos about sound you can check out right over here. I'm Dmitry, thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you are in the market for one and which of these you would pick. And if you have anything else on your mind about an external sound card, let us know. Potentially we'll check it out. I'm Dmitry, thanks so much for watching. Check out this other relevant content. I'll talk to you in the next video.